So this is the financial focus portion of the webinar. And in this section, we're going to talk about should you draw from your retirement funds to pay off debt? So as I mentioned before, I had these two questions recently. One had to do with credit cards and one had to do with student loans. And I know a lot of people feel a lot of debt pressure, and it can be really, you can have a lot of thoughts around, well, geez, I've got this money sitting in this IRA. Should I just cash it out and pay off this debt? I'd feel so much better about it. So I thought it would make sense to look at what the effect is on that, because sometimes, this debt can loom over. Listen, we've all been there, right? We've all had situations where we're carrying more debt than we want to, and then how are we going to pay it down? And there are things that keep us up at night, but you don't want to risk your future for just the comfort of today. So let's look at a couple different things to pay attention to here. So we're going to look at, I'm going to explain to you a couple things. So I'm going to, when we go into the financial plan, I'm going to kind of show you how we work through these plans just with this scenario. And we're using a sample client, and their name is Kevin and Janice Brown, completely made up. But I want you to see, what the base facts of the plans are. So the base facts mean everything as it is today. So this is the Kevin and Janice carrying this student loan of just about $50,000, and the interest rate on that is 6.5%, and that's very, very close to the prevailing rate today. I checked that, and they're looking at taking their retirement funds and paying that off. Now they're under 59.5, so that's a key item. So when you're under 59.5, you have to pay not only tax from a distribution, but you have to pay an excise tax in addition to that, and that's another 10%. So that can really have kind of a waterfall effect with things. So first of all, it drives up your ordinary income tax. That can affect things like tax credits, and they have children, so it can wipe out any kind of benefits that they get from a child tax credit. There's things that you need to pay attention to. So I first want to show the amortization schedule. So let's first look at the actual amortization schedule for this loan. So if we look at, here's where they are. They start at $50,000 in the first year, right? Here's where we are. In that first month, and every month they're paying payments, and they've got $566 coming out of their bank account. Of that, there's $271 in interest, and the rest of it is principal. But then they end up with this ending balance. So they're paying this over a 15-year period that's still left of this, and there is a balloon here at the end of that 15-year period. But this is hanging over their head, and they're saying, well, geez, instead of that, and maybe they're seeing a lot of fluctuation in their retirement accounts, and they're not sure where they're going to be or how much money they're going to earn. And they say, maybe it just makes sense to pull it out, pay off this debt, and be done with it. So this can be daunting. This goes on for a long time. So we're at 2033 by the time this is paid off, and it still requires a lump sum payment, $10,513. So that means that if they wanted to continue for longer payments, they're going to pay for a longer period of time. So compare that to the amortization schedule of just a lump sum payment. Well, it's pretty simple, right? So we've got one $50,000 payment with some interest going out to pay, and then that's paid off, and now they can relax a little bit. But then, so that could make sense. You'd say, okay, that I feel much better about that. Now I can just move on with my life, and the student loan is paid off. So, but what we have to look at, what is the cost of that? So I'm going to share here. I'm going to pull down and share our financial planning portal here. So let's go through this. And this is what I'm talking about base facts. So this is a financial planning term, this base facts. So this is where you are today before any changes are made. So you can see here that we project out to age 95. And these folks already have a problem because there is a gap here. Let me just use my cursor here. There's a gap here between age 90 and age 95. So this is already a failed plan. Now, if they were clients of ours, we'd be looking to close that gap between age 90 and 95. Now, you could be glib about it and say, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to live past age 90," but there's a as you know, these are young folks. They're in their 30s. As they age, the probability that one of them is going to live into their 90s is much greater. So we don't want to have this gap and hope that, well, geez, they're not gonna make it to age 90 and therefore they'll be okay. That's not the way to properly plan. So to begin with, there's a gap, but you'll see that they amass a good amount of money by their savings by the time that they retire. Folks, we got $7 million here. And that's through savings and investments. Now, this is just a straight line projection using some assumed rates of return. And there's some other steps we want to take from a stress test or using Monte Carlo simulations to make sure that the probability of success is at least above 82%. But if we did that with these folks today, the probability of success would probably be right around 50 because we already know that we have this gap in funding. But the importance of this illustration today is just to show you what happens if, in fact, we just take the $50,000 out of the IRA and we decide to pay off that debt. So I'm going to do this layover of this what-if scenario, and I think it might surprise you because, like I said, it frankly surprised me. So here's the base facts. So that, again, that is everything that Kevin and Janice are doing to save and invest in their goals and needs and everything that they want to do when they want to retire. You can see the retirement date right here. These are Kevin's retirement, 2058, Janice's retirement, 2057. It's all worked in there. All we're changing is one thing, and we're applying this what-if scenario to pay off student loans with the IRA. Now, I want you to see what happens here. So the gray here is what used to be in base facts. The new blue here is the new amount. So I hope you can all see this well and see the numbers that are popping up. But let's look at this bottom part. So remember that was age 90 before. Let me turn this off real quick. And we'll go back and see age 90 again. Right? So assets last till age 90. And this is our baseline, right? These are our base facts. This is our baseline. So I'm now turning these things back on. We've got to pay off Kevin's student loans, and we got to cash out Kevin's IRA to pay off the loan. So now that drops the age that the funds last until age 87. 3 years they lose just by taking that $50,000 out of the IRA, paying tax, paying that additional excise tax of 10%, and losing all that potential growth down the road. The total value lost by the time that this plan is no longer funded, age 87, whether they're alive or not, the plan is no longer funded. The total value lost is $1.6 million by that decision. So this is what really shocked me when I was working on this, and I said, "Wow, that's much greater than I expected." But at age, let's just look at retirement age. So that difference there, I don't know if I can make that larger. Yes, I can. So I'm just going to make this a little larger so we can just focus on there. And let's pick a couple ages. So by 65, when they're ready to retire, getting close to retirement, that decision of taking $50,000 out of the retirement plan and using it to pay off the loan, as opposed to just paying off the loan per that amortization schedule I shared with you, even with that $10,000 lump sum paid off, at the end there, they've lost $370,000 to start to begin their retirement. As we get closer here, or as we continue, that spread widens and widens and widens, and you can see it just continues. So even if they want to be glib about it and say they're not going to live until 90, and they're thinking they're only going to live till 80 or so, and don't do that to yourself, folks, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're not doing what you want to do and taking the risk of not being able to fund your full life. Because of bad decisions. But at age 80, that has a negative effect of $1.1 million. And it continues to the number that we saw all the way down to 1.633 at the highest level. So holy cow. I think that illustrates really, really well that effect. I refer to them as critical items. These are critical items that maybe if you knew before, you would make decisions differently. So things I hear all the time is, I wish I would have known about doing Roth conversions, prior to today. I always say, nobody ever says, I wish I waited 5 more years. So these are things you would have done differently. Maybe you would have started conversions earlier. So tax efficient planning like that, shoring up your investment strategies, not learning how to truly protect yourself against risk. These are critical items that can make a huge difference in your retirement plan. Now, if, I'd love to get a hold of Kevin and, what the heck's her name? Kevin and Janice, in their early 30s, and be able to show them this so that I think they would make an appropriate decision being armed with this information. But most people don't have it. What most people do when they have this decision in front of them, they'll talk to their neighbors and friends who aren't necessarily qualified. Sometimes they'll find something on the internet, but you need to find qualified individuals who can help you with these kind of decisions. And even if many of you who are listening to this are probably not in your 30s, maybe you're in your late 50s or 60s, but you may have somebody in your life who is considering making this kind of decision. And if you're a client of ours, I hope you know that we're always available for your loved ones, those in your family, those close to you. We talk to clients' children all the time because I want to avoid this for the people in our network, who are clients of ours and their loved ones. So that is a staggering difference. So I would simply say to Kevin and, oh my goodness, Janice, Kevin and Janice, that's not something we want to do. Let's fund this to age 90, and then let's work to close the gap. So there's a lot of different things we can do for Kevin and Janice to help close that gap. We certainly have a lot of time to do that. And that would be the direction we have. But I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are, folks. I thought that was rather shocking. That's a big difference, is that $1.6 million from that $50,000 decision at age, 33 and 34, or 32 and 33 years old. The other conversation I had was, somebody said to me, so that was about student loans. And the other thing I want to point out to you is that many people they have the belief that student loans, paying off a student loan, carries the exemption of that 10% excise. And that's not true. So education expenses qualified education expenses, but student loans are not considered a qualified education expense. So you've got to, you really have to know, what you're talking about, and you've got to know the people to go to for this correct information. Because if you just Google this, you're going to get conflicting information on this question, and maybe you'll find the wrong answer, and then it'll end up costing you more than you think. But the other question I had was about credit card debt. So this was student loan debt. Well, credit card debt, certainly that also doesn't. There's no exemption for the 10% penalty with credit card debt. Now you might think, well, geez, people are paying, 20%, 15% in credit card debt. That could really skew things, because the difference between the return difference, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the return difference in the example I shared with you with Kevin and Janice was 0.5%. So they were paying 6.5% in their student loan. And I just set the return for the investment at 7%. I wanted to be fair with it. Frankly, if I set it at the same amount, it's still going to have a net negative effect because of the tax amount coming out, the tax and the penalty coming out in the beginning. And the reality is, over the period of time that Janice and Kevin are investing, I would expect a much greater return, or on average of 7% a year. But back to the credit card. So some people might say, well, it's going to look much different with credit card debt because the interest rates are so much higher, and that may be true. But what I told this person who asked me this question about, and it was I'll just share with you, it was a family member, a younger family member. They said, I got this money sitting in an IRA, and we have this credit card debt, I feel like we should just cash out the IRA. They're under 59.5. Cash out the IRA and pay off this debt because, we'll feel better about it. And I talked to them about, how to prioritize the interest rates that they're paying of their credit cards, that debt avalanche approach. And I talked to them about finding zero interest cards. And he said to me, well, actually, we're doing that, where we've got most of our debt on zero interest. And we just, when that is ready to expire, we apply for another card. They have good income. They have good credit. So I said, well, just keep doing that. Just keep doing that. Make those payments. Don't add anymore. Because the difference between paying tax and an excise tax and missing out on future growth compared to zero is tremendous. So if you can continue, if you're listening and your situation isn't student loans, it's credit card debt, and you have the ability to do 0% interest, there's plenty of cards out there where you can, for a period of time, you have to be careful. So these are introductory periods where they'll have you be able to transfer a balance of 0%, because I guess the credit card companies are hoping that you forget, or you let that introductory offer pass, and now you're paying a much higher interest rate. But if you do it correctly, you can just sometimes you can just renew that zero interest, but if not, you can just apply for another credit card. So don't wait for the last minute, and don't be too, you want to have good credit, but it shouldn't be, one of the worst things I see people do is take a distribution from their retirement account to pay off credit card because they want to increase their credit score. That's just crazy. You shouldn't live and die by your credit score. You should have a good credit score, but it's not at the expense of your future retirement. So I hope that all makes sense. That was really eye-opening for me. That was a big, much bigger difference than I thought it was going to be, $1.6 million. And we have a question. Jerry writes, parents and grandparents may want to tap the IRAs to gift the weddings of children and not be aware of these impacts. Thanks, Mark. That's a really great question too. And these are talked about all the time. Or a great comment. Thank you, Jerry. So what Jerry's saying is that parents sometimes will say, well, I got my daughter's wedding coming up, my son's wedding coming up. I want to pull sometimes large amounts, $50,000, $100,000 out of our retirement accounts to pay for this wedding. Now, listen, when you're close to retirement or in retirement, you've got non-IRA accounts that are taxable, taxable accounts. You got tax deferred accounts. You got tax advantage or tax free accounts. The buckets that we do, but it's all retirement money, isn't it? I mean, this is your funds that you're living off of. So whether you're drawing out of IRAs, or whether you're drawing out of Roth IRAs and not paying tax, or whether you're paying capital gains tax out of your taxable account, it's all going to affect your potential retirement longevity and comfort. So great point, Jerry. That's a consideration you want to make, because we all want to do great things for our children. And I have seen people who, sometimes to the detriment of themselves, gift money to their children. So whether it's coming out of a taxable account, tax deferred account, or a tax advantage account like a Roth IRA or a cash value life insurance, consider the impact on your financial plan. And that's part of what we do for people. When we have those meetings about, we ask about your goals and needs, and we identify potential issues. We want to hear all about. It's not just, I want to spend $10,000 a month. And we work to make sure that's the right number. But also, do you want to? I want to hear about your kitchen remodel. I want to hear about maybe the additional house you want to buy. I want to hear about the weddings and other celebrations that you may want to pay for, because we want to see the effect on your financial plan. They're very, 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 very important. And we also want to optimize where those funds are coming from. So, Jerry, great point as always. I appreciate it. That's all for today, folks. It's a little early, a little more streamlined, but I hope that was helpful. I hope you can share this information with those close to you. We'll be back next week, and I look forward to seeing y'all, and I hope you have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.